What comes to mind when you think of the British elite? For centuries, wealth in the UK has been passed down through family lines, keeping influence in the hands of a small minority. A select few who've attended a handful of exclusive private schools and highly selective universities have dramatically shaped the nation. But contemporary elites often push back against the idea that they are elite and instead present themselves as ordinary and self-made. They see their success as the result of hard work and a more open and meritocratic contemporary Britain.
Complete rubbish. I've never considered myself to be one of the elite. I consider myself, justifiably or not, to have been a successful professional. I don't consider that elite. This belief that there is an elite that can dominate society, I have considerable doubts about that.
That was an excerpt from an interview with one of Britain's most highly paid and well-connected lawyers. It was conducted by LSE sociologists Sam Friedman and Aaron Reeves as part of their study of the British elite from the Victorian era to today. They carried out hundreds of in-depth interviews with elites and carefully scrutinised the profiles of 125,000 entrants of Who's Who. That's the long-standing dictionary of people reaching widely recognised positions of national influence. It makes up 0.05% of the UK population and dates back to 1897.
We also analysed thousands of probate records, which enabled us to identify the wealth of the people in Who's Who, but also allowed us to pinpoint a more distinct wealth elite who are both included in the book, but were also in the top 1% of the wealth distribution. One aspect of our analysis that was particularly interesting to us was the lengths that elites would go to come across as ordinary. They would eschew their privilege, they would downplay aspects of their backgrounds that might signal privilege or advantage, and they would counterpose themselves to an aristocratic elite in the past.
We're very working class. Okay, in the 80s my dad had a Rolls Royce.
One way that this showed up was through lifestyles and tastes. So elites today no longer pursue only highbrow cultural activities such as going to the opera or listening to classical music, but also emphasise more ordinary activities such as being with pets or spending time with family.
But are these expressions of ordinariness really accurate? Patterns of elite recruitment over the last century paint a very different picture. In the early 20th century, Britain was one of many countries to see a significant reduction in wealth inequality, mainly due to the increase in home ownership. This trend continued until the 1980s. Yet those from the top 1% have remained remarkably powerful in propelling their children into top positions. These same children are almost 20 times more likely to reach elite positions compared to the rest of the population. Education has been key to this. Private schools and prestigious universities have historically played a major role in reproducing elites. Alumni of the Clarendon schools, a group of 9 historically prestigious all-boys schools, remain 52 times more likely to reach the British elite than those attending any other type of school. And although the expansion of higher education temporarily undermined the power of Oxford and Cambridge, this has been reversed in recent decades. Today's elite are almost as likely to have attended Oxford or Cambridge as they were over a century ago. White men from privileged backgrounds still dominate Britain's elite, but surely there's been some change in terms of gender and race. Recent decades have seen a big increase of women in the elite, but when it comes to ethnic minorities, despite some prominent exceptions, change has actually been minimal. This persistent reproduction of elites brings us back to ordinariness. If the elite hasn't really opened up over time, why are today's most influential people so keen to convince us that they are ordinary?
The answer is that ordinariness has real currency with the public. Our analysis shows that people are much more sympathetic to elites who they see as humble and down to earth. And so the reason why this performance of ordinariness is so important is that it obscures the fact that actually the social backgrounds of elites have real implications for how they think and what they do. Specifically, we find that elites from very privileged social backgrounds tend to tilt to the right politically and socially. And so when elites successfully convince the public that they're the same as everyone else, This masks the very real political differences that continue to separate them and everyone else in society.
So, while Britain's elites may look and behave very differently today than they did 100 years ago, the forces that propel them to their positions of power, family wealth, private schools and elite universities, have changed very little.